So, why do bad things happen? God gives mankind free will. He gives people the ability to choose. He doesn't want us to be mindless robots that only know how to do good.
This is an argument that I don't think I can understand. Lots of religious people say that bad things happen because we have free will, and if bad things didn't happen, then we couldn't have free will. But this doesn't make sense, because God created everything, and He created the possibility for us to suffer, and the possibility for us to do bad things. He could have easily made it impossible for those things to happen, and we could still have free will to choose to do or not to do whatever is possible.
We hear about poverty and starvation and then blame God for not doing something about it. But actually, research tells us there's enough food on this planet to see every person fed in abundance. It is a fact that there are more resources than we need, and yet we blame God for the bad stewardship of mankind.
Just because one area of land has a lot of food does not mean that another area of land should or can have that food. There are reasons why these areas don't have food. Some of it has to do with economic problems, and that cannot be solved if people just send them food. In fact, it'll probably just make things worse. But it also has to do with geography. They just don't have the resources available to them, and that's something that God can help with. God sees that these people are helpless, and He's saying that if those people don't help them, I'm not going to either, and that doesn't make Him any better than the people that you say are abusing free will.
We also ask God, why is there war? And yet it's mankind who started wars, not God.
You're kidding. So are you saying that nowhere in the Bible does God tell people to go to war, or declares that a war is going to happen? Well, let's go through the Bible and see for certain that God never caused anybody to starve or to go to war.
Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger, and in thirst, and in nakedness, and in want of all things, and he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck, until he have destroyed thee. They shall be burnt with hunger, and devoured with burning heat, and with bitter destruction. I will also send the teeth of beasts upon them, with the poison of serpents of the dust. For the Lord hath called for a famine, and it shall also come upon the land 7 years. Moreover, he called for a famine upon the land, and brake the whole staff of bread. Therefore thus saith the Lord of hosts, Behold, I will punish them. The young men shall die by the sword, their sons and their daughters shall die by famine. They shall die of grievous deaths, they shall not be lamented, neither shall they be buried, for they shall be as dung upon the face of the earth, and they shall be consumed by the sword and by famine, and their carcasses shall be meat for the fowls of heaven, and for the beasts of the earth. Therefore deliver up their children to the famine, and pour out their blood by the force of the sword, and let their wives be bereaved of their children, and be widows, and let their men be put to death, let their young men be slain by the sword in battle. And I will send the sword, the famine, and the pestilence among them, till they be consumed from off the land that I gave unto them and to their fathers. A third part of thee shall die with the pestilence, and with famine shall they be consumed in the midst of thee. And a third part shall fall by the sword round about thee, and I will scatter a third part into all the winds, and I will draw out a sword after them. When I shall send upon them the evil arrows of famine, which shall be for their destruction, and which I will send to destroy you, and I will increase famine upon you, and I will break your staff of bread. So will I send upon you famine and evil beasts, and they shall bereave thee, and pestilence and blood shall pass through thee, and I will bring the sword upon thee. I, the Lord, have spoken it.
So obviously God does not cause suffering.
Humanity makes a mess, creates tragedy, and then asks God why He let it happen.
And that's a very good question, because whether or not He causes wars, which He says He does, He can still do stuff about it. Just because some people are terrible people does not mean that He has to allow them to torture others. But I guess by now He's just tired of divine intervention.
Also, it means if God exists, then Satan exists as well. We find it hard to imagine Satan being real, but when we see the evil in our world, it's not so hard to believe in the existence of Satan. The Bible says that Satan wants to steal, kill, and destroy.
Actually, it says that thieves come to steal, kill, and destroy. And thieves was just a metaphor for all that came before Jesus. But even then, stealing,
But the women, and the little ones, and the cattle, and all that is in the city, even the spoil thereof, shalt thou take unto thyself, and thou shalt eat the spoil of thine enemies, which the Lord thy God hath given thee. Take ye the spoil of silver, take the spoil of gold, for there is none end of the store and glory of all the pleasant furniture.
Stealing and killing.
And the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and he went down to Ashkelon, and slew 30 men of them, and took their spoil, and gave change of garments unto them which expounded the riddle.
Just killing.
So the Lord sent pestilence unto Israel, and there fell of Israel 70,000 men.
Destruction.
Your eyes have seen what the Lord did because of Baal Peor. For all the men that followed Baal Peor, the Lord thy God hath destroyed them from among you. Lest the anger of the Lord thy God be kindled against thee, and destroy thee from off the face of the earth. But the Lord thy God shall deliver them unto thee, and shall destroy them with a mighty destruction, until they be destroyed.
So obviously God does none of those things.
Satan is the one who wants to bring pain and suffering into our lives, not God.
Then why did God bring pain and suffering into our lives? It was God who cursed the ground. It was God who then created suffering. It was God who then forced humans to toil throughout their entire lives. And it was God who then created pain and suffering during childbirth.
You might be going through something right now that seems too much to bear.
Yeah, this video.
The ironic thing is, when something awful happens, we blame God and push him away, when actually, God is the very thing we need in that situation, the one who will comfort us and carry us through.
Okay, sure, religion can be used as a coping mechanism, but that's besides the point that God is not benevolent.
Picture this. A little girl is running in the park. She falls over, scrapes her knee and is bleeding. Her dad rushes over. He picks her up, wipes her wounds and comforts her. Was the pain she felt her fault? No. Was it her dad's fault? No. In her pain and confusion, she doesn't point her finger at her dad and ask, "Why did you let this happen?"
Well, here's the thing. In that analogy, the parent had absolutely no control over the situation. So what you're saying is that God is completely helpless as to whether or not humans suffer. But the parent did not create the circumstances for the child to be able to hurt. But that is what God did. And he did it on purpose.
Things happen to us that aren't our fault, and they aren't God's fault.
Well, let's say that it isn't his fault. He's still just sitting by the side and watching, just like a loving God does.
Have you ever asked, why do good things happen? Like when you fall in love.
And then break up because relationships typically end, and there's a 50% divorce rate.
Or when a baby's born.
Assuming that the baby isn't stillborn, it doesn't have a debilitating condition, and doesn't die anytime soon.
Or when you laugh so much, you end up crying.
You're right. Why was I focusing on all the bad in the world? Why was I thinking about all of the terrorism, all of the torture, all of the meaningless wars, the incredible amount of debilitating conditions that people have, when I could be thinking about what really matters? Dick jokes.
How can God not exist when there's so much good in our world?
Is that a serious question? Because I can answer that question. We have brains, and brains have their own feelings, and those feelings respond positively to positive stimulus. This is all neurological and a result of evolution. We don't need God to experience positive stimulus. So the good in the world isn't proof of a God, much in the same way that the bad in the world isn't actually disproof of a God. It is, however, disproof of a benevolent God. It's disproof of a God that actually cares about us. And before I go, I've heard a lot of you say that you wish that I had more views or more subscribers or what have you. I think that time will tell, but if you're one of those people that think that way, then you can help me out by sharing my videos with people who you think would be genuinely interested.